for number 5, now we've got our time, our space, space-time, Ingrid's 4D, variables, IV, which I've made up these variables. And now for number 5, I don't know what to call this yet. 5 is just full circle. Sure. Where was I? Okay, so I was thinking about cones. Because when I look at the circle and I think about space-time, again, it's not flat. So I think about something coming out more like 3D. So let's consider past time, this little cone or quadrant, and then future time and space past the y-axis. I hope I'm making sense. Maybe I'll just hopefully keep getting better. Now, we've got our fake variables or variables. So we've got this business management system here that's interested in profits and progress. We've got always interrupting. I would consider that any media, or even when I think about when I was teaching and maybe going to a faculty meeting and trying to prepare for a lesson, it's like getting interrupted and saying, stop doing what you're doing for kids, essentially, and listen to what we have to say. And looking back, I can see now that I'd say 90% of the faculty meetings that I considered I went to, especially towards the end when I started getting uncomfortable with some of the faculty meetings, was that I couldn't sit at a meeting and work on something for kids. It's like, no, you need to pay attention to us. But I question that looking back, how much time that I spent personally in faculty meetings that could have been in an email, for example. So it's very time consuming, these businesses are. Historical interpretations, and again, intellectual property. So let's just say these 1, 2, 3, 4, oops. We're going to put you at the center. But as I'm figuring out my calculations on this, don't I sound fancy? That no matter what, you're aging. That's time. But how our space is being occupied is kind of interesting to me. So I did mention a jar, I think, last year. So start to maybe consider that. What are some things that you want to reflect on from your past? For example, I can't get any time back. The mistakes I've made and the times that I've enjoyed, I can't get that back. It's done. So it's like looking at the future, but if we look at past events, that's also going to give us an indication of patterns for somewhat predicting the future. There's going to be a lot of variables that we don't understand. But as far as my research is concerned in education has not changed. The buildings have not changed that much. The learning has not changed that much. The structure has not changed that much, even though the technology has. Global events have changed. The school system by and large has not changed over time. Yes? And with good reason. What I want to kind of put out there, I guess, is consider this, that business management systems are really doing everything in their power to ensure the intellectual property is to their advantage. How history is being interpreted is going to be your clue, at least that's what I spend a lot of my time just looking at the original sources. So instead of just relying on a teacher who's listening to the NAEP in this case that I research, they're going to want you to learn something that's going to benefit them, even if it means kind of an interesting interpretation of history, and that includes math and English and history, right? And then they're going to get reinforcements from always interrupting. Again, this is the media, this is like, you will do this because it's for the betterment of you. which again is kind of my whole questioning of this. So number 5, kind of feel like full circle in my little wheel. And I like to call this one like from the telescope to the microscope, because I like to get really detailed in the specifics of what I'm researching, and at the same time looking at the big picture. If you want to look at the big picture for a second, let's go back to time. Let's consider this, right? So here's your time, age 5 to 18, as you're plugging along on this timeline, x-axis. Stuff's happening, right? There's stuff out in space that's constantly having forces on you. Your parents, teachers, laws, society, you name it, you have all these forces that are acting on you, which takes up your mental space, physical space, and your time. So let's say you go to school from, let's say this is your time that you're spending in school, in the bigger picture. You graduate from high school, and then what? According to the plan, you go to school till you're 18, till you're a legal adult, and then there's college for some, or a job. There's some kind of learning, unless you go right into a job. But even then, I guess what I'm getting at is you're ultimately going to be working for the business management systems, which is in itself a variable. I have no idea. When they talk about us, I think that's the us they're talking about, not the us meaning you students. This is going to be for a profit. So what I'm finding is pretty much anything that you do in school is going to occupy your time. It's going to occupy your physical space, your mental space, other variables over this course of time until you what? End up working essentially for the business management systems that have invested heavily into their intellectual property, i.e. public education. I hope I'm making sense. All right, so that's 1 through 5. I've accomplished my task today. And 6 through 10 later. Thanks for listening.